How do you get newer runners or new to you runners to see it in that way, where this obsession with times is actually counterproductive for the majority of runners? And that's my hot take. If you stop obsessing over the time, you'll hit the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's coming back to, what does the time mean to you? What does it represent? And is that the only goal? Because listen, I have time goals. I like to chase, A goals, B goals. But if we're going for the time alone, it's kind of shallow, isn't it? Like there's so much more that comes with it. I always say, if someone comes to me and they're like, I want to train for a marathon, I'm like, that's fabulous. Can we make that a milestone instead of the end goal? Can this be part of your running journey instead of your entire running story? The way that I view it and the way that I like to reframe it is, let's let your fitness decide where you fall. Very similar to weight loss, actually. Like, I'm not an advocate for weight loss. If your body needs to lose weight, I firmly believe that it will lose the weight that it needs to. But bringing it back to running, let's let your fitness decide where it needs to fall. If your tempo pace is, I don't know, an 8-minute mile today, but next week you go out and you're having a great time and you run 7:30s, well, maybe it's time to increase your tempo pace. I don't know. And I think it's really just continuing to chase the feeling, continuing to make sure that you're in it for the right reasons, and letting the outcome just decide itself. Because if you can show up and say, I'm going to run fast today because I know what fast feels like, then that's really exciting, because then you get to those mile markers or you get to that finish line and you're like, okay, so today fast for me means, whatever the watch says. And I think it's a really great way for us to connect back into our bodies and where we're at, again, in these seasons of life, because fast means various things for me and you, and how we can kind of appreciate where we're at with what we have, rather than saying, well, I'm significantly slower than I used to be, so I'm not going to be happy until I reach this time mark again. It's like, you may never reach that time mark again, or you may have to sacrifice a lot of things to get to that point, at which point it may not be worth it for you. So can we find the feeling? And similar to, I hear this a lot in a bunch of walkers, runners, and people that are new to the sport is, oh, well, I ran a 5K, but I'm slow, or I'm not as fast as you. And it's such a relative term, because what does slow mean to you versus me? I know what it feels like to run a mile, to run 10 miles without stopping. And that's a pretty empowering feeling. And I bet you know what that feels like too. You can tap back into one of those first times you did it. And so let's return to the joy of the sport, in which we have common feelings, rather than comparing our paces and our times to each other, because there's no joy in that.